Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I have used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value for my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would from any major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list priced against the specific condition of the card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have our Mox Pro patron Charles, piloting Heliod, God of the Sun. This is a hard stacks deck, seeking to lock down opponents from doing anything before winning through combat. Charles' opening hand contains the Snow-Covered Plains, Serra's Sanctum, Enlightened Tutor, Spirit of the Labyrinth, Torpor Orb, Court of Grace, and an Archaeomancer's map. Next, we have Ashani, piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. This deck, called Blue Farm, can win quickly with Oracle and Breach or grind the game with its commanders. Ashani's opening hand contains a Verdant Catacombs, Wheel of Misfortune, Rite of Flame, Mana Vault, Command Tower, Flusterstorm, and a Pyroblast. After that, we have our Mox Pro patron Peter. Peter is one of the staff members of Wizards of the Coast and loves CEDH. He is piloting Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. This is a mono-black storm list looking to use its commander and combo off as quickly as possible by paying tons of life instead of mana. Peter's opening hand contains an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Buried Alive, Swamp, Blood Pet, Wishclaw Talisman, and his London Mulligans are Opposition Agent and Dimir Machinations. Finally, we have Alex, piloting Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. This deck seeks to resolve Kinnan and activate its ability over and over to cheat massive threats onto the battlefield. Alex's opening hand contains a Phyrexian Metamorph, Command Tower, Trinosphere, Mana Crypt, Breeding Pool, and his London Mulligans are Misty Rainforest and Lurking Predators. Without further ado, let's kick off this ladylike, laborious, lackluster lamentation. Charles had the best mermaid makeover and gets to start us off. Charles draws a card for turn and plays a Snow-Covered Plains. He passes. Ashani draws a card for turn and plays a Command Tower. He casts a Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts Mana Vault. He casts Wheel of Misfortune. In response, Charles casts Enlightened Tutor. He fetches up a Deafening Silence onto the top of his library. Then Wheel resolves. Everyone chooses a number, with Charles and Alex choosing 0, Peter choosing 3, and Ashani choosing 10. Then Ashani takes 10, and then Peter and Ashani discard their hand and draw 7. With nothing else, Ashani ends his turn. Peter draws and plays a Swamp. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He pays 6 life to help cast his commander, Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. He pays 2 life through Kirik to cast Blood Celebrant. Kirik triggers and gets a +1/+1 counter. He activates Blood Celebrant 3 times, paying 9 life through Kirik, adding 3 black. He pays 4 life through Kirik to cast Final Parting. Kirik triggers and gets a +1/+1 counter. Then Peter fetches up a Grey Merchant of Asphodel into his graveyard and Chainer Dimension Master into his hand. He activates Blood Celebrant 3 times, paying 9 life, adding 3 black. He pays 4 more life to help cast Dark Petition. Kirik gets a counter, and then he fetches up a card into his hand, adding 3 black. He pays 2 life through Kirik to cast Cabal Ritual with Threshold, adding 5 black. He casts Animate Dead, targeting Grey Merchant in his graveyard. Kirik gets a counter, then Grey Merchant enters the battlefield. Grey Merchant triggers, with each opponent losing 7 and Peter gaining 21. He pays 2 life to help cast Demonic Tutor. Kirik gets a counter, and then he fetches up a card into his hand. He activates Blood Celebrant 3 times, paying 9 life, adding 3 black. He pays 4 life to help cast Sidisi, Undead Vizier. Kirik gets a counter, and then Sidisi enters. Peter exploits Sidisi, sacrificing Grey Merchant and fetching up a card into his hand. He activates Blood Celebrant, paying 3 life, adding a black. He pays 2 more life to cast Dance of the Dead, targeting Grey Merchant. Kirik gets a counter, then Grey Merchant enters the battlefield. Merchant triggers and each opponent loses 9 and Peter gains 27. He activates Blood Celebrant 2 times, paying 6 life, adding 2 black. He pays 4 more life to cast Flesh Writher, and Kirik gets a counter. He activates Blood Celebrant 2 times, paying 6 life, adding 2 black. He pays 2 more life to cast Yawgmoth's Will, and Kirik gets a counter. He activates Blood Celebrant, paying 3 life, adding a black. He pays 2 more to cast Demonic Tutor from his graveyard. Kirik gets a counter, and then Peter fetches up a card into his hand. He activates Blood Celebrant twice, paying 6 life, adding 2 black. He pays 2 more to cast Saw in Half, targeting Grey Merchant. Kirik gets a counter, then Saw in Half resolves. Grey Merchant is destroyed, and Peter creates 2 copies. Each enter with a devotion of 12, Peter gains 48, each opponent loses 24, dies, and Peter wins the game. What you just saw was a turn 1 win from Kirik. That was absolutely crazy to watch. Let's do another one. In this game, Alex brings back Kinnan Bonder Prodigy, and his opening hand contains an Elvish Mystic, Selvala Heart of the Wilds, Phyrexian Revoker, Lodestone Golem, Rejuvenating Springs, Rhystic Study, and a Chrome Mox. Peter brings back Kirik, Son of Yawgmoth, and his opening hand contains a Soul Ring, Lotus Petal, Homeward Path, Beseech the Queen, Thoughtseize, Cabal Ritual, and a Blood Pact. Ashani brings back Tymna and Kraum, and his opening hand contains an Imperial Seal, Ancient Tomb, Dark Ritual, Luxury Suite, and his London Mulligans are Training Center, Swords to Plowshares, and Bergi, God of Storytelling. Charles brings back Heliod, God of the Sun, and his opening hand contains a Linvala, Keeper of Silence, Drannith Magistrate, Hushbringer, Swords to Plowshares, Land Tax, Grafdigger's Cage, and a Snow-Covered Plains. And Alex gets to start us off. Alex draws and starts off by casting Chrome Mox, imprinting Tishana, Voice of Thunder. He plays a Rejuvenating Springs for turn. He casts an Elvish Mystic. Alex passes. Peter draws and plays a Swamp. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts a Lotus Petal. Peter ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays a Luxury Suite. He casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. Ashani ships the turn to Charles. Charles draws and plays a Snow-Covered Plains. He casts Grafdigger's Cage, much to the dismay of most of the table. Charles gives the turn to Alex. Alex draws and casts a Lotus Petal. He casts Rhystic Study. Alex ends his turn. Peter draws and plays a Homeward Path. He pays 6 life to help cast his commander, Kirik, Son of Yawgmoth. Rhystic triggers and Alex draws. Peter pays 2 life through Kirik to cast Blood Pact. Kirik and Rhystic trigger, Alex draws, and Kirik gets a counter. Finished up, Peter passes. Ashani draws, plays an Ancient Tomb, and passes. Charles draws and casts Land Tax. Rhystic triggers and Alex draws. Charles passes. Alex draws and plays a Tropical Island. He casts his commander, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. He casts Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. Alex ends his turn. Peter draws and starts off by paying 6 life through Kirik to cast Beseech the Queen, paying the Rhystic Tax. Kirik gets a counter, and then Peter fetches up a Demonic Tutor into his hand. He pays 2 life to help cast Demonic Tutor, paying the Rhystic Tax. Kirik gets a counter, and then Peter fetches up a card into his hand. He pays 2 life to cast Dark Ritual. Kirik gets a counter, and then Peter pays for Rhystic. Then Peter adds 3 black. Peter pays 6 life to help cast Peer into the Abyss, paying the Rhystic Tax, and Kirik gets a counter. In response, Ashani casts Dark Ritual. Rhystic triggers, and Alex draws. Then Ashani adds 3 black. He casts Ad Nauseam. Ad Naus resolves, and Ashani reveals a Misty Rainforest, Ottawara Soaring City, Mana Vault, Jataxian Probe, Wheel of Misfortune, Mana Confluence, Dispel, Badlands, Mystic Remora, Windfall, Talisman of Creativity, Toxic Deluge, Brain Freeze, Chrome Mox, Snap, Underground Sea, Rhystic Study, Ranger Captain of Eos, Dockside Extortionist, Dramatic Reversal, Verdant Catacombs, Plateau, Silence, Chain of Vapor, Red Elemental Blast, Jeweled Lotus, and a Dothy Voidwalker, deciding to stop there. Unfortunately, he did not find any free interaction, and Peer resolves. Peter draws half of his library and loses half of his life, rounded up. Peter plays a City of Traders for turn. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts an Aetherflux Reservoir. He casts Mox Amber. Alex draws through Rhystic, and Peter gains 7 life through Aetherflux. Peter pays 2 life to cast Reign of Filth. Kirik, Aetherflux, and Rhystic all trigger. Alex draws through Rhystic, Peter gains 8 life, and then Kirik gets a counter. In response, Alex casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost, countering Reign of Filth. Peter pays 2 life to cast Blood Celebrant. Alex draws, Kirik gets a counter, and Peter gains 9 life. He activates Blood Celebrant 4 times, paying 12 life, adding 4 black. He pays 4 more life to help cast Professor Onyx. Kirik, Aetherflux, and Rhystic all trigger. Peter pays 3 life through Blood Celebrant to pay for Rhystic. Peter gains 10 life through Aetherflux, and then Kirik gets a counter. Then Onyx resolves. Peter activates Blood Celebrant, paying 3 life, adding a black. He casts Chain of Smog, targeting himself. Kirik, Aetherflux, Professor Onyx, and Rhystic all trigger. Peter pays 3 life through Blood Celebrant to pay for Rhystic. Each opponent loses 2 and Peter gains 2 through Onyx. Peter gains 11 life through Aetherflux, then Kirik gets a counter. With no answers, Chain of Smog resolves. Peter discards 2 cards and copies the chain, targeting himself. Each time he copies the chain, Professor Onyx triggers and each opponent loses 2 life. He does this over and over until the table is dead, and Peter wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a match! Congrats to Peter on both of his wins tonight. It is a common trap to take monocolored decks for granted. People don't pay attention because they believe they have inherent weaknesses due to their color restriction. Peter showed tonight why you should not fall into this trap. Peter was an expert with his deck and navigated its complicated lines with ease. He was able to capitalize on its built-in speed and ability to race the entire table. It was a joy playing with him this evening, and we love seeing awesome decks such as these. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.